So, what we call as the self or the personality can be understood better by looking at the constituents of what we call as a personality. And it is called skandhas, 5 skandhas. The one states the essential pragmatic core of this doctrine as follows. There are 2 examples he wants to give. One states the essential pragmatic core of this doctrine as follows. Form is not the self, anatta. Form is not the self, anatta. Form means the material form, the shape, size, color, etc. is not the self. If it were, this form could not turn oppressive. And with regard to form, it would be possible to achieve the intention, let my body be thus, let my body not be thus. So first skandha is the form skandha or the rupa skandha. The formula is that this form or nama rupa, for example, the way it is used in Sankara Vedanta also, is not the self. So not the self means anatta. Atta means self. If it were, means if the form were the self, this form could not turn oppressive. If it were, this form could not turn oppressive. And with regard to form, it would be possible to achieve the intention, let my body be thus, let my body not be thus. If the body was the self, then the body should be able to have an intention that let my body be thus. You define a new shape, form, color. Or you may say that my body be not like this. That the body should be able to determine if it was the self. But because the body is not the self, therefore it turns oppressive and one cannot achieve the intention, let my body be thus, let my body not be thus. Because the body is not the self, it cannot have an intention and be as it wants. So body becomes a cause of pain. And one cannot achieve the intention to become of such and such form. And so with the feelings, perceptions, impulses, and consciousness. So here remaining 4 skandhas are being listed, which is feelings, as we said, pleasant and unpleasant. They are not the self. Otherwise, they could determine their own pleasantness or unpleasantness. But it is not possible, and that is why these feelings cause oppressive feelings to us. They have become oppressive to us. Similarly, perceptions, of ideas that dawn on us, the thinking, the memory that comes, the perceptions, which are basically mind. And impulses, meaning here the formations or the samskaras. The samskaras create an impulse for us and drive us to act in certain ways. So those impulses are not the self. Otherwise, why would we engage into actions driven by certain impulses which do not ultimately result into our happiness. You cannot bring up a particular impulse as you want. The impulses come on their own without our volition and control. And finally, the consciousness. The consciousness is associated with every dharma. What do you think? Is form permanent or impermanent? Is form permanent or impermanent? Form is impermanent because form changes. Form is born, stays, grows, decays, and dies. So form is impermanent. It is impermanent, O Lord. But is the impermanent ill or is? Is the impermanent ill or is? So what is impermanent? Is it dukkha or sukha? That is the question. It is ill, O Lord, so impermanent is dukkha. But is it fitting to consider that which is impermanent, linked to suffering, doomed to reversal as this is mine, I am this is myself? So Buddha is asking the disciples, so is it fitting, is it right to consider that what is impermanent, linked to suffering, doomed to reversal as this is mine, I am this is myself? No, indeed, O Lord, and so for feelings, etc. Therefore, whatever form there is, past, present, or future, inner or outer, gross or subtle, low or exalted, near or far away, all that form should be seen by right wisdom as it really is. That is, all this form is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. And so for feelings, etc. Seeing this, the well-instructed holy disciple becomes disgusted with the skandhas. Disgusted, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, he is set free. So this is one formula. So fundamentally, looking at the skandha and asking whether it is permanent. Once we arrive at an idea that it is impermanent, then the question is, this impermanent thing, skandha, is it dukkha or sukha, ill or is? Obviously, it will be ill. So, is it wise to identify ourselves with this which is impermanent? Answer would be no. Similarly, we can look at the same exercise with the feelings that we generate and the perceptions, ideas, and the impulses or formations which appear as our experiences here, which becomes the source for our day-to-day momentary experiences, and the way we react to events in life which are conditioned by our formations or sanskaras or instincts. Impulses, and similarly the consciousnesses. associated with all these dharmas. So none of them are really permanent, so identifying with them only leads to dukkha. So what happens when we identify that? He says, seeing this, that I am not this, I am not these skandhas. Seeing this, the well-instructed holy disciple becomes disgusted with the skandhas. Today we have no disgust for these skandhas, which are nothing but categorized into 5, the experiences categorized into 5, with which our consciousness is associated. When there is no association of consciousness, there are really no entities at all, because we come to know only because of consciousness. All the time these are present along with it, intrinsically with the consciousness. Seeing this, the well-instructed holy disciple becomes disgusted with the skandhas. Disgusted, he becomes dispassionate, vairagya, means loses interest. He loses ragadvesha, means he does not try to possess them, hang on to them. That is dispassion. He is not any more greedy about them, to have more and more of that. Greedy. Through dispassion, he is set free. So as long as dispassion does not exist, you will not leave any of these skandhas. So one has to undergo the experiences, sukha, dukkha of these skandhas. This is perfectly clear in itself, and the very simplicity of the argument has the ring of truth about it. The formula is manifestly intended as a guide to meditation and not as a basis for speculation. So this way of formula that was presented earlier, starting from the skandha, asking whether it's permanent, impermanent, and then if it is impermanent, is it is or ill? And then if it is ill, do you want to identify with, is it right to identify with that? And telling yourself no. This all is a meditative process and not simply as a speculation. It can easily be worked out into a 10-point meditation on anything that may be regarded as one's own. As I said a few days ago, somebody asked, how do we meditate? That was the question. So here is an analytical meditation where, very interestingly, Edward Conze is providing us the 10 steps to go by one. Whatever we call as our own, you pick that item and then start following these 10 steps. It can easily be worked out into a 10-point meditation on anything that may be regarded as one's own. Number 1, one may emphasize and watch the independent power of the object, its movements independent of one's own will. An object which you call as your own, you bring it up and observe its movement. And notice that that movement is independent of one's own will. Number 2, one may watch it follow its own course and how it arises, abides, and breaks up. So what you call as your own, is it arising by my volition, or is it arising on its own course? It arises, abides, means stays with its particular identification, and breaks up, disappears. That we need to watch. Number 3, one may call up into consciousness the latent fear of its reversal and the dread that it may turn oppressive. Now, what we call as ourselves, you bring up that object and see how we have fear of losing it, because we call it our own. So now, by effort, see for yourself, one may call up into consciousness the latent fear of its reversal. So that is, what is our own may not exist as it is as our own. So there is always a fear in our mind. So bring up that fear. So bring up that fear and see, which is within us. And the dread that it may turn abrasive. So what we are possessing, we also have a fear inherently inside, which it may not come out easily, of either losing it, or it may become hostile to us. It may become uncontrollable to me. It may become oppressive to me. Such a latent fear is there inside our heart. We need to let it come up and see. Number 4, one may see it as a liable and exposed to danger and tribulation as a target. One may see it as a liable and exposed to danger and tribulation as a target. So what you call as your own is subject to danger and tribulation. It is possible that it can cause, there may be a danger for that we need to recognize. It proves no safe and impregnable shelter, does not solve the most urgent problems of life, and even postpones their solutions. So what we hang on to, that really may not be a safe haven for us. So whereas we try to identify ourselves with it and then try to hang on to it. But after all, it may not give us that kind of a ashraya or shelter or safety. It provides no safe and impregnable shelter, does not solve the most urgent problems of life, and even postpones their solution. Even postpones the urgent problems of a solution. One may see that possessions possess you, see their coercive power, and that I am theirs is as true as that they are mine. It is not that I possess the home, but in a way the house possesses me. I am in its domain. I am in its control. I am not able to go away from it. So it is rather I am possessed by the home or any object that I think is mine. But not that I am really possessing it. Possessing should mean having a control. Being able to renounce it is the real possession. When you are not able to renounce or leave it, how could you ever possess it? You are possessed by it. Number 7, the actual course of events is influenced as much and even more by outside conditions than by anyone's self-willed exertions. The course of events that we experience is influenced as much and even more by outside conditions than by anyone's self-willed exertions. When we examine whatever happens in our life, you pick up any event that is happening in our life which you think you are in control. On closer examination, we are likely to find that there are other causes and reasons which triggered that event and not just my wanting it. In spite of my wanting it, or in addition to wanting it from my side, there must be many other factors which enabled it. So my volition has not made it happen or occur. the actual course of events is influenced as much and even more by outside conditions than by anyone's self-willed exertions. Number 8. The self which appears to be in control is multiplicity of factors. The self which appears to be in control is a multiplicity of factors and divides itself against itself. So multiplicity of factors is the self that made that event happen, as is shown clearly in temptations, self-defeating actions, phobias, etc. Many actions happen which are against our own welfare, but they happened because of us. So there are many other environmental factors that have gone into that, and it is not just my will. Because why would you ask for a self-defeating thing? But it happens. In an incompletely integrated person, conflicting impulses, when they are more or less permanent and organized, point to different centers of control rather than to one unitary self. In an incompletely integrated person, conflicting impulses, when they are more or less permanent and organized, conflicting impulses, when they are more or less permanent and organized, point to different centers of control rather than to one unitary self. So we always have mutually contradictory ideas. They do not point to one unitary self, but they point to different centers of control rather than to one unitary self. Number 9. The actual course of events is more often than not different from my wishes, and my actual achievements from my aims. The actual course of events is more often than not different from my wishes. I wish for something and something else happens. This happens more often. And my actual achievements from my aims. I aim for something, but my achievement is different, or it may be the same but lesser quantity, or maybe a lesser quality, and so on. This we need to observe carefully. When I try to distinguish what is in my power from what is not, I cannot really point to anything definite that is really in my power. So now the final question, is there something that is in my power of which I am able to bring into existence and keep it as long as I want and terminate it? Is there anything that is in my power? And I try to distinguish what is in my power from what is not. I cannot really point to anything definite that is really in my power. In my power. So these are the 10 steps that basically an investigation of your own ego or volition or will, trying to sit and examine, meditate on that in these 10 aspects. Anything that I call as my or my own, my power, my object, my goal. So any event that is happening, is it really out of my own volition or is it really not in my control? That is what we need to examine so that we can take it to a point and we say, really things are not happening as I wish, they have their own course. This is what is the intention of this meditation. We'll continue with the remaining in the next segment. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.